put on the stock material that we just tapered, and this is the tool that was created for use under the power hammer. And you'll see how it works in a moment, but it's pretty effective in starting to forge out the blossom shape out of this piece of pipe. This is as far as I can take it under the power hammer, but it gives me a good start to be able to finish this shape by hand on my next heat. So I've finished the dome on the Bullrush blossom, and it's quite smooth, but it also has the facets just of the hammer marks, which make it look handmade and unique. And now I need to continue the texture back into the Bullrush body so that it's sort of homogeneous, or just a continuing look. So it has a bit of a texture in nature, a slight texture, and I'm just going to try to simulate that just with a very slight texture through the body of the Bullrush. So now that we've tapered the stock material and we've created the Bullrush, the next steps, since it's a force fit joint, a friction fit joint, rather than something that is arc welded together, so the step would be to drill two different sized holes, a smaller hole for the top opening, for the top of the tapered, and it would be a bigger hole on the opposite side for a thicker section further down on the tapered material. The Bullrush with the blossom with the holes drilled in it would be secured in a vise. You'd take the stock material, place it through the holes, and hammer it until it's a solid fit. And what you see here, to secure it in place would take, while it's still in the vise, would take a punch, and the opening will be basically closed. It will be a very tight fit, but just to make sure and secure it in place, would take a punch and pinch the material from the blossom onto the stem to make sure that it stays permanently fixed. So after cutting out and sanding the lily pad, the next step is to soften the edges, to thin the edges of the material so that it looks more realistic. Just have to use much thicker material than an actual lily pad would be. But if we thin the edges, then it gives the perception when you're looking at it that it is made out of very thin material, therefore looking very natural. And to do that on this, I hammer it by hand, just on the edge of the anvil, and it takes 3 heats to thin the edge material on the lily pad. So I've thinned out the material to a fairly thin edge. It adds a little bit of a unique texture, and I've done approximately 1/3 of the lily pad, so 2 more heats to thin the edges of the lily pad. Now that I've thinned out the edges around the lily pad, it's time to add a texture. This is a commercially available tool. It's called a pebble texture, and when it's transferred to the lily pad, it adds sort of a nice realistic sort of ripple or veiny texture to the surface of the lily pad. It takes 2 heats. Both sides of the lily pad, it's time to add the veins, which make it look realistic, and that is done with a veining chisel. It's similar to what a cold chisel would be. It's sharp, but it's dull at the same time, just so you're not cutting through the material, but so that you're leaving a sharp vein. It's got a rounded surface so that you can make turns as you're chiseling, which you can't do with a flat-edged chisel. And it will be giving off a lot of radiant heat, so I need to wear a thick glove with my chiseling hand, and it needs to be held down with a spring-held device that locks the material in place as I'm chiseling. Into the lily pad. Now we have the 8 lines incised into the lily pad, and the next the next step is to flare up the edges and give them a bit of a ruffle, and that's the step that makes this look somewhat realistic to making it look quite realistic in comparison. And to accomplish this, we use just a die that is sort of what it's called like a squished ball shape. So it's cupped out, and just use the back of a ball peen hammer to set the material into that die, resulting in the curled up shape on the edges. Edges raised and sort of randomized so it looks like it's slightly ruffled as well. Next step would just be doing the other half. To that point that we just demonstrated, and where we forged all the components for the bulrushes. To get us to that point, that would be approximately 210 heats of the various materials and approximately totaling 15,000 hammer hits by hand and under the power hammer. Assembly is also an involved part of the process, MIG welding the components together without seeing the welds, them all being manipulated to look natural, and each leaf being unique and one of a kind. Then the finishing process is also quite involved, in where the piece would be sandblasted, get a rusting patina called a Japanese brown that's commercially available, and then a clear coat either being tinted linseed oil, which is flaxseed, or getting a spray finish, which could be a lacquer or two-part polyurethane finish if it was going outside, so that it would last against the elements. And so, all involved. When you're looking at it, it looks pretty simple, but now you have a little insight as to the blacksmith's process to creating beautiful, unique, lifelike sculpture.